Good rising, brethren. This is Big Judah coming to you guys from California. Before I begin, give all praise to Most High Yahweh. Acknowledgement to the earthly mother. Who is wisdom? Who is the Holy Spirit? Acknowledge it, Yahushai. I pray the Most High blesses this lesson this evening, gives more knowledge and understanding of the events of the past in order to understand events that are currently happening on the earth. So we get a much better understanding of the things that are soon to come on the earth. Brethren, we know that the Most High was going to put a foolish nation above us. But what we do also know is that these guys are really good at covering their tracks, really good at trying to hide their history and the things that they've done. Now, we already know that the Greeks and the Romans love to tout themselves as these great ancient philosophers and great ancient thinkers. And you would think that many of these people would have these great histories on their own lands. You would think that these schools by these great Greek philosophers would have been pretty much started in their own land, like before they went out and conquered other people. But you're going to find out that that was not the case. That many of these great thinkers were established in other people's lands. Now, as we already know, this is just going to be some more proof that the Greeks and the Romans did not come up with anything new, just like we found out that they didn't even have the word for an apprentice. Since they didn't have a word for an apprentice, that means they could not have been masters. So it would make sense then that they would be setting up their schools and their instruction in other nations, because if they were never the masters, then they had to have been schooled by someone else. So let's get a little proof of that right now. And also be on the lookout later on this evening for more videos. I'm going to try to get out a few videos this evening. So this is just going to be the first of a few. So just be on the lookout for more videos coming later on this evening. We're going to jump into an inquiry into the nature and causes of the wealth of nations. Volume 2, we got the 6th edition. You guys, if you've ever looked up how much these ones are, first editions of this book range from $350,000, and there's a couple of other ones for like $250,000. And when I first saw that and saw the price of these books, I just figured that there's got to be some great information for Israel in these books, and there are. Just like we did a video a little while ago, a couple days ago, talking about the fact that they didn't have a word for an apprentice in their languages, in the Greek and Roman languages. That came from these books. Like I said, they've always tried to portray themselves as the masters and everyone going to them to learn. And we know that nothing could be further from the truth. Those pesky facts always, revealing the lies. Let's check this part out real quick. The Wealth of Nations, I want to say this is volume 2. Okay. Now it says the schools of the two oldest Greek philosophers, those of Thales and Pythagoras, were established, it is remarkable, not in ancient Greece, but the one in an Asiatic and the other in an Italian colony. So they had to go to other lands to establish their schools. That lets you know that they were in other lands jacking information. We know that the Egyptian priests had to teach in Alexandria. It wasn't Greeks that were there teaching this information. They were learning from the Egyptian priests. That's why all these people were coming to these great cities of like Alexandria, and people don't maybe put two and two together that Alexandria was set up in Africa. And they were getting schooled by so-called Africans. You see that? So again, the schools of the two oldest Greek philosophers, those of Thales and Pythagoras, were established, it is remarkable, not in ancient Greece, but the one in an Asiatic and the other in an Italian colony. All those colonies had established themselves in countries inhabited by savage and barbarous nations. Now, apparently, there must not have been that savage and must not have been that barbarous. If they were just savages and barbarians, then why would you set up a school in their land? You could have taken whatever resources you wanted and needed and taken them back to the schools that you had established in your own country. But you didn't do that. That just shows you that there's the proof of the fact that they had to go to other lands to get knowledge. They had to go and get knowledge from other people as apprentices in order to raise themselves up and to be in positions to be masters. And that's what's going on right here. And that's what's being confirmed right here. So again, all those colonies had established themselves in countries inhabited by savage and barbarous nations who easily gave place to the new settlers. They had plenty of good land, and as they were altogether independent of the mother city, they were at liberty to manage their own affairs in the way that they judged was most suitable to their own interest. Now, they're gonna try to make it seem as if it was about the land and whatever else, but of course they're gonna leave out the fact that they were getting knowledge and information from these lands. The history of the Roman colonies is by no means so brilliant. Some of them, indeed, such as Florence, have in the course of many ages, and after the fall of the mother city, grown up to be considerable states. But the progress of no one of them seems ever to have been very rapid. So it wasn't really like a rapid, growth of these colonies, of these people. It was very slow and tedious. They were all established in conquered provinces, which in most cases had been fully inhabited before. Exactly. They set up these cities and setting up these schools and places, okay, where they were conquered provinces. And we already know when they conquered these lands, they would go to the libraries. They would get these books. They would get this information. They didn't tell the world that they were getting this information in order to learn it for themselves, in order for them to raise themselves up from being, the real barbarians, and in raising themselves up to actually be learned individuals. The quantity of land assigned to each colonist was seldom very considerable. Now, that's not even important, but the main thing you want to take out of this is the fact that they established these schools, they established these learning centers, not in ancient Rome, not in ancient Greece, but they established them in conquered lands. And these schools weren't for the people that were there. These schools were for the Greeks. These schools were for the Romans. Why would you have to go set up a school in conquered provinces if they were full of barbarians, right? They were full of savages. I'm sure there's nothing that they could have taught you because you're so great and you're so smart. Why would you have to set up a school for your people to come and learn in those places? There were tens of thousands of people who received training and learning in Alexandria. Of course, they try to always make it seem as if, the lands north of the Saharan desert are just something totally different than the lands, to the south. That so-called black people, lived below the Saharan, desert. And it was pretty much all like these Europeans, who were up in Egypt. But if you take a look at the pictures when they opened up King Tut's tomb. I was watching a video on Netflix yesterday when they talk about the Step Pyramid and then these so-called Egyptians of today. We're talking about these, these findings of, the Egyptian kings from 4,000 years ago. Well, when they opened up Tutankhamun's tomb, there's two guards that are right there by the door. And those guards were as black as midnight. They were hella dark, blue black. Didn't look like the so-called Egyptians of today. And what do you think? They're not going to represent, they're not going to make statues representing what they really looked like back then? Of course they would. And that would be a definite, much better representation of who was in these lands thousands of years ago. So you just think about that, and you think about the Greeks coming over, and when they conquered these lands, coming and setting up schools in those lands. Why is that? Because the knowledge and understanding was in those lands, as evidenced by the pyramids, as evidenced by the pyramids being aligned up to the heavens, to the stars. That is, the Most High left all those things here, to show you how these other nations can't duplicate that knowledge and understanding, even till today. So again, you can see who they try to put in the middle here of the picture as being the master, but we know that they were nothing but the apprentices, learning from the Moorish masters. And we know what the word Moor meant back in the 1700s was a Negro. All praise is the Most High Yahweh. Acknowledgement to the earthly mother. Who was wisdom? Who was the Holy Spirit? Acknowledgement to Yahweh. Shalom.